If people don't think that you understand your business inside and out, front ways, back ways, sideways, upside down, they are not going to move forward with you.
Welcome to the Freedom Point Real Estate Podcast, where we talk about creating more time freedom through passive real estate investing. Passive investing in real estate challenges conventional investment wisdom. We are passionate about learning and sharing resources with others who are ready to transform their investing mindset. Quick disclaimer as always, I am not a CPA, I am not an attorney or a financial advisor. This is not financial advice, not telling you or anyone else what to do. The views and opinions expressed in these podcasts are provided for education and informational purposes only and are not necessarily the views of my employer. I'm glad you're here. Now let's dig in. All right, welcome back, Freedom Point podcast listeners. Thank you again for jumping into another episode of the Freedom Point. We're so glad you're here with us today. I've got another amazing guest, Jeff Barnes. Jeff, welcome to the show.
Thanks so much for having me here, Jeremy. I appreciate it.
Yeah, looking forward to chopping it up with you for sure. Jeff is a former U.S. Navy nuclear power plant operator on a submarine. He's a Navy diver or past Navy diver, risk management director, technology enthusiast, business growth expert, advisor, and management consultant. Jeff, I'm not even doing your background much justice here because I know you've got quite a colorful history, past journey, et cetera. Maybe you can help our listening audience learn a little bit more about, your past, your journey, and what you're focused on today.
Absolutely, Jeremy. I appreciate that. Yeah, so like you said, I started my career actually in the U.S. Navy. I was running a nuclear power plant and an engine room on a submarine for a number of years. And I learned at that point all about technology and systems, processes, procedures. We were doing a lot of things that no one ever gets to do or see, being on a submarine. And I left that in 2006 and I went to work for one of the largest companies in the world doing financial services, risk management, equipment breakdown, and technology insurance, a number of different things. And along the course of a dozen years, I ended up running my own division. And my job was to go out there and find technology initiatives that we could incorporate into our business. So it started with just, okay, what are the things that are on the horizon that we need to be aware of? And then we started working with our corporate venture team. So we were one of the first companies to spin up a corporate venture arm. We started working with a number of venture capitalists. And our job was to identify these technologies that were relevant to the future of the financial services industry. And so we did over $1 billion in transactions in that when I was in that role, partnering with a number of different companies, helping companies raise capital, developing use cases, acquiring these companies and these technologies, and then scaling them up to our Fortune 500 landscape. And so that's kind of how I got started in the world of investing in technology. And I left that company in 2018 and I actually acquired Angel Investors Network at that point, and I've been running that ever since.
That's great. I appreciate your background there. So just out of curiosity, I don't want to assume that our listening audience understands or knows anything about the world of venture capital or angel investing. I specifically, and I outlined this in a book that I recently published, I'm a part of a group here in Minneapolis called the Gopher Angels Investor Club, right? Just happens to be a group that meets at my former alma mater, the Carlson School of Management. And the primary focus there is to talk about healthcare type startups and biotech and kind of really anything in between. But maybe you can kind of educate our listening audience a little bit more about, your role within venture capital and specifically, now your role with the Angel Group Investors Club that you're heading up.
Yeah, absolutely. So the term angel investor actually comes from the 1800s when playwrights were trying to produce plays in New York on Broadway, and they wouldn't have the money. And so somebody would loan them the money, say, "Oh, you're my angel. Thank you so much for making this happen." So that's where that term originally came about. And over the years, it's morphed into the Silicon Valley world of, hey, the early stage investors, the one that gave you the first dollar in the door to help you start growing your company and building a company. That's traditionally what people think of angel investors about. But there's this whole spectrum of investment capital. We call it a capital stack. And there's a number of different types of capital providers, everything from your mom, your brother, your sister, your aunt, your uncle, right? We call that pre-seed. These are your friends and family round, right? And the friends and family are going to give you your first leg up, hopefully, anyway, because they trust you, they like you, they want to see you succeed. And then you get into maybe your seed round of funding, which is You're not making money yet. You've got a little bit of traction. Maybe you're getting users. Maybe you've done the development, whatever it looks like. And you're trying to get some early money in. That's where angels generally come in. They might write you a check for $25,000, $100,000, maybe a little bit more, because they want to have equity in your company when you're still really, really early on. And they know that they're taking a really big risk, right? As a matter of fact, angel investing is the riskiest investment out there by all standards. And so, what I'm trying to do is I'm actually trying to de risk angel investing through a number of programs that we're working on. But going back to the capital stack and that journey, not every company needs to raise capital, right? A lot of companies can cash flow their way out of it because you don't need to have a big staff. Like if you're starting a doctor's office, you don't need a lot of capital, right? Especially if you're not having X-ray machines and MRI machines and all this fancy equipment, you need a little bit of money, and hopefully you can self-fund that to get going. And then as bring in patients, you should be able to cover staff and modest growth. But a lot of companies that require a lot of human capital or a lot of research and development do require a significant amount of actual capital to get to the point where they can go to market and build a business. And so this is where venture capital comes in. A venture is anything that's relatively new, somewhat untested, unproven in the market. A lot of people call it the product market fit. You're generating sales, you're generating revenue, right? But you're not quite profitable yet. And so a venture capitalist might pour in a few million to tens of millions of dollars into what we call Series A, B, C, D round and beyond. And that is the growth capital that a lot of companies need to hit that traditional hockey stick growth, right? They finally figured out how to sell their product. They're maybe not profitable yet, but at some point they'll get to this tipping point where their revenue will exceed their expenses and they're finally profitable. But you need marketing dollars to get there. You need a team to get there. You need, operational expenses to be covered. And sometimes you need to hire those people before you have the revenue coming in. And that's where a lot of the VC stuff comes in.
Yeah, no, I appreciate you breaking that down for me and our listeners, Jeff. I'm personally involved in 12 different opportunities right now at that pre-seed seed round, and you're exactly right. I mean, I make those investments knowing that hopefully I don't consider them all a donation in the future, but more than likely a good amount of them probably will end up in the donations category. And then, of course, you hope that one or two get sent to the moon. But my curiosity is really around when you de-risk these opportunities. I mean, you can have the best newest technology, business plan, service in the marketplace, but it's got to always come down to the jockey that's riding the horse. I know that sounds cliche, but really that's who you're betting on. So how do you de-risk whether or not an individual that's coming looking for seed money or pre-seed money, how do you vet that person out to ensure that you're putting your investors in the best possible scenario to win?
Yeah, it's a good question. It's hard to answer. Jeremy, you're in the space, so you might know the answer to this, but do you know what the number one biggest determining factor whether a company is going to be successful or not is? When they did all this research, they went through and they found out that it was actually not the amount of capital. It wasn't even necessarily the team, the experience of the team. What they found that it was timing, right? Timing of bringing something to the market was actually one of the biggest determinants of success. And as a result, if you don't get your timing just right, there's a pretty good likelihood that you're gonna miss the market. You're not going to go to market. And you're not going to succeed. So if that's the case, well, why would you can't time a lot of things. We don't know when the next best AI tool is to drop or something so futuristic that people will actually not even understand it, let alone want to buy it, right? So how do you get there? Well, you have to have a team that understands that it's going to take a lot of work, a lot of energy, right? A lot of people will see these overnight successes and they forget that it was maybe 20 years in the making for them to finally get that overnight success. And they didn't see the blood, sweat, tears, the late nights, the early mornings, the sleepless nights of wondering how they're going to pay their bills. So the number one thing you're looking at is your team. You're looking at the founders, you're looking at the C-suite, and you're really looking to see how good are they at bringing other people around them. Because let's face it, as good as we might be as individuals at certain things, there's a lot that goes into growing a business. And so you need to bring the right people in. So when we talk about de-risking startups, you're looking at really what is their staying power? How much perseverance and determination does the team have? Because the idea, you may think it's great, but the market may not, right? And you may think that something is a total dud, but then the market comes in and says, no, this is amazing, right? You go look at Apple. I mean, we think of Apple as the most amazing company in the world, but you look at the Newton. Well, Newton flopped and failed and was miserable. However, if you come back to what the Newton did and what it was, well, it was just way ahead of its time. So eventually, over the course of the next decade or so, all of a sudden Apple has the iPod and the iPhone and all of these different devices, and it's become this unicorn, amazing opportunity. It's not a unicorn because it's not a private company, but just this amazing opportunity. And so it's knowing that you have the right team on board that you're going to work with, and how do you figure that out? Well, how communicative are they? Are they willing to share the good, the bad, and the ugly? Right? Are they willing to tell you how bad things are? Are they willing to be honest with you? Are they hiding from you? Are they, do they take your money and run and disappear and never email you again, never even say thank you, right? Things like that. And a lot of angel investors will sit and wait. They'll sit on the sidelines and they'll wait to see if you're around 12 months from now, 24 months from now, and then they're ready to put the money in because they want to know that you're actually going to be serious about running this company, regardless of how difficult it becomes.
Yeah, and the buy-in cost, I would assume, are higher in 12 months from now, especially if the business plan has already executed on some key points during that trajectory. What are in your opinion, what are the top couple of different things a business owner should focus on when looking to scale from a 7-figure company to a 9-figure company?
It's all about systems, right? Once you get to understanding how to sell your product to the market, then you need to do everything you can to systemize that process, right? That's what this book was all about, all hands on deck, is how do you systemize and proceduralize your business? Because really a business is just a conglomeration of different systems that are intertwined and work together. Because if you want to go from, say, a 7-figure business, let's just use a consultant as an example. Everybody understands what a consultant is. They come in, they tell you how to fix all the problems in your business, and they leave, right? Well, there's not very many consulting companies that go to the 9-figure range, right? But there are a few, right? There's the PwCs of the world, there's the Deloittes, there's the BCGs, and these companies have figured something out, which is that it doesn't take the smartest, sharpest, most brilliant person to go and visit every single one of their clients to help them. Instead, what do? They figured out a way to proceduralize the deliverables that they give to their clients. Okay. This is why most VCs and angel investors love SaaS companies. It's a product that you build and you sell it over and over and over again, millions of times without having to do a lot of additional work every single time you bring on a new client. And so you're looking for scalability, and that scalability comes into, can you deliver not a lot of products to a lot of people, but a very, very small amount of products to a large variety of people. Okay. And then you create all the systems around that to make sure that that works without you. And I'd say that's the number one thing a business owner needs to be thinking about is, if I stop doing this job tomorrow, would the company still run? And 99.9% of the time, the answer is no, right? But if you can do that one step at a time, one piece at a time, and replace yourself in these different areas, then you're going to have an actual business.
Yeah, it makes total sense to me, and I've certainly seen that in my own life as well as in the lives of many successful small business owners, whether they're business owners that own companies that are on Wall Street or Main Street or anything in between. I would like to talk a little bit about your kind of journey from, I'll call it, from military to the boardroom, right? So, with your experience as a Navy nuclear power plant operator and diver, how did that experience in your past really best prepare you for the world of business, risk management, and scaling companies?
Well, the risk management part, that's actually easy, right? When you're on a submarine, what are you trying to do? Well, you're trying to not die most of the time. And that comes down to systems and procedures and things like that, and following your standard operating procedures. But especially working in a nuclear power field, we were a little bit different than a lot of the military. I'd say special forces probably up there. But what they're training you to do is how to think, right? They're really teaching you how to think. School does a terrible job of this. And anybody who's gone through any sort of education, K through 12, they don't teach you how to think. They teach you how to memorize and regurgitate, right? And the idea would be you need to learn how to think, because not everything is written in a book and things aren't going to go well every single time. And oh my gosh, if this pump fails when you're at total operating capacity, operating power, 100% power, and that pump is critical to the operation of the plant, and this thing breaks, how do you fix it? How do you get back up and running? How do you prevent from dying if it does leak and starts creating a flood or steam line rupture, things like that? And so you train over and over and over again. All right. And what this does is it builds your ability to think on the fly and and figure out solutions to problems, which is a great tool for any employer to have, any business to have. You know, I always say that the your value in the world is in relation to the size of the problems you can solve. So the bigger problems you can solve, the more valuable you are to not just yourself and your family and maybe your company, but the world even, right? And when you go through this process over and over and over again, eventually what it does is it builds up your confidence, right? So the risk management piece is learn how to think, learn how to spot potential problems before they happen, fix the problem, mitigate the risk, right? Reduce the risk or avoid the risk altogether. That's what you're trying to do in risk management. That's what you're trying to do when you're operating a nuclear power plant. You know, avoid the risk if you can. And then when you're going through this as a person, you are developing, because all of a sudden you're thrown literally into the fire. In some case, we actually did have training where they throw you right up against the fire, like, hey, make sure you don't burn yourself. Um, and when you do that as a human being, your box, your comfort zone gets bigger, gets wider and wider and wider. And you realize that if you can just put yourself into not necessarily dangerous, but somewhat scary and intimidating situations on a regular basis, that you as an individual are going to continue to grow. And that is necessary if you're going to be any kind of leader, let alone an entrepreneur who's starting with nothing and trying to come up and create a vision out of scratch. Right? It's a very intimidating process. And only the people that know how to, again, persevere and push through all that and expand their comfort zone on a regular basis are going to succeed.
Those that are listening to this episode, I want you to go back about 2 or 3 minutes and re-listen to what Jeff just said again. Incredibly powerful words about putting in the reps and muscle memory, and building up confidence, by doing, and being in your comfort zone, and that comfort zone will expand. The more reps that you put in, the more times that you go through trials, tribulations, struggles, challenges. It's really just a massive development process of personal development. And so I really appreciate your perspectives there. Have you seen any big mistakes that are kind of common amongst founders that they make when trying to automate and systematize their businesses?
Trying to do it too soon. That's the number one challenge I see, is that, and I'm guilty of this too. We all want to automate as much as we possibly can because we want to get the TDM taken care of and move on, right? But the fact is that if you automate too early, you may not understand the customer journey well enough or what the pain points are in that automation to realize that it can't be automated yet, right? And what I find is that we have the curse of knowledge when we do this. And what do I mean by that? When you have the curse of knowledge, you understand something so well that it becomes, like you were just saying, muscle memory. You just do the work without actually knowing what you just did because you've done it so many times. Right? You think about driving a car. I know that a lot of Americans don't know how to drive a stick shift anymore, but for those of us that do, when you started learning it, it was terrible. Clunk, clunk, clunk. You could never get the clutch engaged right. You get in the wrong gear. You're grinding gears all the time. By the time you're doing it for a few years, you're shifting without even thinking about it. You're talking on the phone, drinking coffee at the same time, right? And so that's what ends up happening as you are getting good at a process, right? And a technology. And so a lot of the challenges that we face when we're trying to automate and build a system is forgetting that there are nuanced little details that we have to pay attention to. And we actually have to write those down into a standard operating procedure. We actually have to train somebody because you might do something so quickly that your trainee doesn't even recognize it. And as a result, when they try to replicate what you just did, they miss this one critical thing. And it's only after you've watched them mess up a few times, you're like, oh, I forgot to tell you, you actually have to do this thing. It's a little bit further to the left and forward, not just to the left and forward. It's a little bit further and forward to get it into this gear, right? And they don't see you doing that because it's such a little nuance. And so that's the thing I see, is that if you try to do it too early and you don't really understand the nuanced steps of the procedure, then it's going to be very difficult for you to create the system that somebody else can then manage or run.
Yeah, it makes sense. And that's one of the biggest challenges I would say that a lot of people have. And that is, I know how to do what I need to do in order to be successful, but I don't trust the next person's ability to be able to execute in the same manner or degree that I'm able to do it. So what way would you coach that individual that maybe needs a mindset shift, that if you really want to truly grow and scale your business, you have to trust, okay, that someone else can replace some of those activities that you deem yourself to be the resident expert at?
Yeah, I mean, it's trust but verify, right? Like I talk about that in my book, is that we call it moving the expertise upstream, right? When you are just doing the work all day, every single day, then guess what? There's only so much capacity you have, and you can't then move up to another level or another rung on the ladder, if you will, and manage more people doing that. And so you have to get out of your own way. Like that is a necessary, critical step of growing any business. So how do you do that effectively? Well, first thing is you become the expert, right? And especially if you are the expert, if it, you know, it's hard for anybody who's not a heart surgeon to teach somebody else how to do heart surgery, right? Like it's just not possible. At least I don't think it's possible. AI might make it possible. I don't know. But for the most part, you have to put in the reps. You have to become the expert. I think it's Ken Blanchard talks about situational leadership, right? When you become a level 4 leader, you understand the thing you are doing so well that you can teach somebody else how to do it. And that's the next critical step. Not only do you have to be able to do it, but you have to be able to explain it. And this is where entrepreneurs, especially, are really, really bad because we're impatient, right? We understand things at a really high level. You can take in a lot of information very quickly. You can assimilate that data, that information, and you can make a snap decision and judgment and move forward. And most people are not like that. Most people need to see it 100 times, 1,000 times, some of them, unfortunately. And they need to take their time to go through it and build that muscle memory from scratch, right? Because you got to remember the folks you see play in Major League Baseball or football or any of the sports out there, they make it look so easy. And why is that? Well, why did Kobe Bryant make that last second shot look so easy? Michael Jordan, same thing. You know, Tom Brady. Well, because they had the memory, the muscle memory. They put in the reps a million times. They've done the same exact thing, so they know how to do it. And so you have to then train the other person and let them learn on the job. That's the best thing. I think, you know, the apprenticeship programs of the past are the best way for a lot of people to learn. It's like learn on the job with you. They first watch you a few times, then you watch them several times, then they do it themselves and they have to check in, right? And when you do that, especially if you have a written procedure, you're going to find where the gaps are, right? Because they're going to miss steps. And that's the best way to do it. And then you verify that they're still doing it. You always have, that's where management comes in. You have to come back and check on a regular basis. Are you still doing it right? And so it's a tedious process, but it's a necessary step to growing any business.
Yeah, it makes total sense. And you really reminded me of I have a daughter who's 11 years old and she's a figure skater. And the stuff that you see her doing on the ice as an 11-year-old is incredibly, it's insane how good she is as an 11-year-old, but
Yeah.
she makes it look effortless. But it's because she's spent 6 out of 7 days inside of a rink, practicing and putting in the reps over and over and over. And for her, those moves probably feel fairly natural. To the rest of us, it looks very fluid. But what people maybe don't know is the amount of reps and times that she had
Yeah.
to practice to get where she's at today.
I'm Zach Captainstall, CEO and co-founder of Rise 48 Equity. Our goal is to help you protect and grow your wealth by investing in large multifamily apartment buildings. We do all the work as far as sourcing these large apartment buildings from the brokers, doing all of the on-site management with our vertically integrated property management company, doing all the renovations with our vertically integrated construction company. We completely rebrand the exteriors. We will renovate the interiors to our full platinum level scope, which increases the value of the asset to get that profit margin for the investor. If you'd like to learn about how you can partner with us on these exciting opportunities, you can go to our website and set up a call with our team.
I would love to shift focus, if you're okay, and talk a little bit about raising capital, which I know is a primary emphasis of yours. And I believe that you partner with investors, at kind of this, pre-seed, seed round, venture capital side. Sometimes these could be technology investments, sometimes alternative assets. I primarily raise capital in the multifamily value add space. So can you talk to us a little bit more about, kind of what does it take to succeed, in raising capital, especially in today's competitive landscape where it seems like everybody is looking for equity?
Yeah, absolutely. So the first thing you need is a really thick skin, right? It is not easy to raise capital. Anybody that tells you otherwise is lying or they've never done it. Because I don't care. I mean, if you're Elon Musk, maybe you can say, hey, I've got this new thing and I'm going to go raise money and he'll get the money tomorrow. Grant Cardone's a good example. He's built up a reputation over time. Anybody who's never raised capital before, don't expect it to be easy. Don't expect it to even succeed for the first 6 months sometimes, because it is really, really challenging. And what it comes down to is, again, putting in the reps, right? Um, you know, Larry Fink, I think is his name. I can't remember exactly. The guy who runs Blackstone or BlackRock. When he built his first hedge fund, over 100 different investors, people who knew him, said no, right? And here they are today. And you think about Thomas Edison. How many times did it take him to fail to finally figure out the incandescent light bulb, among all the other things he does? And that's what a lot of people don't realize. There's no like magic button that you can press, no silver bullet where it's going to work every single time, right? I work with different types of investors, everything from family offices, venture capitalists, private credit providers, banks, SBA lenders, to angel investors, friends and family. Every single one of them has a different way they want to see and consume information. Some of them want to watch a video. Some of them want a one sheet. Some of them want to have a discussion with you. Some will watch a webinar. Some of them want an entire binder full of documents with the tabs laid out in a pretty fun, concise way, right? So there's no one size fits all right? But I will tell you that what is really, really, really important to every single one of those is that if you are the one pitching, you better be able to give your presentation standing on your head, blindfolded without a presentation in front of you to reference, right? If people don't think that you understand your business inside and out, front ways, back ways, sideways, upside down, they are not going to move forward with you, because they don't have if you don't have the confidence to answer their questions or the ability to answer their questions, and no one on your team can, they do not have the confidence that you know what to do with their money. And that's a really important piece, because the way that people consume information is always going to be different. But that one thing I would say is always important, so that you need to know what you're going to do with their money, how they're going to get it back, how long is it going to take, how are you going to run your business, what does your business do? Like, answer all the questions and have a really concise story to tell along those lines.
Yeah, I appreciate you sharing that. And you're exactly right. I mean, you can tell when somebody's confident about the business plan versus when they're not, right? It doesn't take very much for an investor to kind of smell, that lack of confidence there. So appreciate you sharing that. What, in your opinion, or maybe in your experience, I should say, what's the best way to connect with investors and kind of create this investor attraction magnet?
Yeah, the best way is in person. And I haven't found anything better. We use LinkedIn all the time. It's a great tool to get the conversation started. I would say that using, networking events that you can go to on a regular basis is going to be the best way. Now, go to the networking events where people have money, right? If you're going to, and I hate to say this, I hate to cast this broad brush, but a lot of, like, for example, real estate investor groups is a whole bunch of people that want to learn how to become real estate investors. There's not a lot of people who have been successful with those groups, because once you get to a certain level in your career, you realize, hey, I don't need to waste my time or spend my time going and learning anything else, right? I'm actively doing, and I'm learning by doing, and I'm networking, and that's how I'm learning. And so you need to find those kinds of networking groups that you can go to where you're going to start meeting the right people. Business networking events are really good ones. Philanthropic events, guess what? That's where the money is. The people have more money than they would do with. What are they doing? They're giving it away. Going to charity events, going to philanthropic events. Those are great ways to do it. Running your own podcast. Believe it or not, this is one of the best things to do, because I may not be able to go get certain people on the phone because they know, hey, Jeff's calling, oh crap, don't even answer that. He probably wants money. On the other hand, if I say, hey, I'd love to interview you for my podcast and just talk about your journey, oh, that's great. I'll talk about myself. That sounds amazing, right? So that's another way to do it. And then the worst way to possibly do it is just pure cold outreach. Like, just go find somebody's email and start emailing, right? You don't want to do that, because you come across as an unwelcome pest, and you don't want that when you're trying to raise money from someone.
Yeah, makes total sense, and I appreciate you unpacking that. What's next for Jeff Barnes? As we kind of move to round out 2024 into 2025. Are there any personal, professional goals that you have that you want to accomplish?
Absolutely, man. We just launched our own platform earlier this year, so we're going to be trying to push $1 billion through that platform in the next several years by 2030. And what we're really looking to do is turn angel investing on its head, right? I want to, instead of telling companies, hey, hire us or just go on our platform and pay money to be on there and good luck, hopefully raise money, to kind of shift angel investing to where I invest in the companies to help them raise money. And it's sort of like a micro VC / private equity / angel investing model. And so I'm really excited about that. I'm excited about changing and revolutionizing angel investing so that companies can be successful in raising capital. And a lot of businesses are going up for sale, but unfortunately, roughly 80% of the businesses that try to be sold will not be sold for one reason or another. And a large part of that is because they're too small for private equity to want to buy them or to be bought out by a larger competitor, but they're too big to just, have somebody just come in and take it over, right? They want to get some money. And so teaching people how to raise capital for acquisitions is actually something that's on our roadmap, right, as well.
Yeah, that's great, Jeff. What would be one or two different ways that our listening audience can connect with you to learn more about what you're up to?
Yeah, so main website is angelinvestorsnetwork.com. That's where our business is. And then my personal website is jeffbarnes.ceo. And there you can learn a little bit more about me and reach out and connect.
Sounds good. Well, we'll definitely put those links in the show notes for this episode. Jeff, really appreciate the value that you've brought our listening audience today.
Absolutely. Appreciate you having me here, Jeremy.
Of course. And listening audience, thank you again for jumping into another episode of The Freedom Point. We look forward to having you join us on the next episode.
Thank you for hanging out with us today and for listening to the Freedom Point podcast, powered by Starting Point Capital. This show is for entertainment purposes only. Nothing said on this show should be considered financial advice. Before making any financial decision, please consult with a professional. This show is copyrighted by the Freedom Point podcast. Written permissions must be granted before syndication or rebroadcasting. If you're interested in connecting, you can find contact information at startingpointcapital.com.